This video contains the ultimate evil in the world, harsh language. Everyone who is trying to get into heaven, please shut off the video right now or your soul will definitely be forfeit. Everyone else, beer and popcorn time. Hello and welcome to this review of my Maltron single-hand keyboard. Or Maltron as it looks like on the keyboard, which to me sounds like it translates to bad machine, which is an excellent premonition of the maximum shit factor that this deplorable contraption embodies. Yes, this is that thing I teased recently. I've been looking to show you one of these for a while, even though it was obviously going to be self-torture. They're normally quite expensive, about £300 when bought new, and usually not that much cheaper when bought second-hand. But I got this one for considerably less, so at least I'm happy with that if nothing else. The reason it looks so weird is that it was developed as an ergonomic keyboard for one-handed people. Now, that's all well and good, and I'm glad I still have both my hands, but fuck me, I think I'd have it bad enough if I lost one of my limbs without having to use a manifest nightmare like this piece of motherfuckness. I mean, talk about getting kicked when you're down. I mean, suppose you get into an accident and wake up in a hospital. I'm not sure what would be more sickening, the revelation that they had to amputate your arm, or the fact that you'd have to use one of these for the rest of your life. Of course, the one-handed story is just their version of it, much like gun manufacturers say that products are meant for self-defense rather than killing people. I think we all know this keyboard is actually intended for left-handed people. I mean, personally I like to jerk off right-handed, but hey man, if you're a lefty, this might be perfect for you. Maltron also do a two-handed version, which I briefly showed on the channel years ago when I found one at the recycling center. I no longer have that one, I sold it and bought 5 other keyboards off its proceeds, so that was a nice find for sure. The Maltron keyboard inspired boards like the Kinesis, so it's more or less the mother of ergonomic trepidation. The shape of it somehow reminds me of a diaper or something. A diaper splattered with shit. Just look at this eldritch anathema. I swear, every time I look at it, my retina gets scarred a little bit more. They even do a keyboard for someone with no hands at all, this head and mouth stick keyboard thing here, which sounds like an April Fool's joke, but is barely any weirder than this other stuff that they made, so I can only assume it's a real thing. If anything, it makes more sense than this abominable contrivance. Maybe I'll get to review that thing someday as well. The central idea behind the keyboard is this cavity-shaped typing bowl, I guess, which works because ergonomics. After all, using a standard 101 key layout like this will of course immediately break your arm in 5 places if you use it, so if we're serious for a second, something like this is really your only option if you want to do any sort of typing without dying 5 seconds later. Either that or it really is just a single cheek diaper keyboard. I tried to use this for a week as per usual, but honestly, it's impossible. I've used keyboards before that ground my typing speed to a halt, but this was just too much. I think I eventually managed 4 days of it, one-handed by the way, and backed up heavily with my backup keyboard for anything that required a greater than 3 characters per minute input rate before I succumbed and just gave up. Now, mind you, I managed the full week of the My First keyboard, that night owl nightmare from a while ago, the television tribulation, the Copam curse board, even the fucking safe type scourge Christ in lollipop heaven, but this Maltron menace was just too much for me. Fuck this bucket of atrocious ass juices. So there are several problems that present themselves here. The concave nature of the typing bowl, so to speak, I guess was designed in such a way that the keycaps are somewhat equidistant from your fingers in all directions. Now, to me, this immediately invites questions like, but why? Because I can't see at all what would be so unergonomic about having some keys closer by than others. It doesn't make any fucking sense. Indeed, because the keys are positioned in such a way that they more or less shy away from you, I found that you're really having to reach for them. You're supposed to put your palm on this rest here, I guess, to prevent you from having to keep your arm raised all the time. But honestly, how am I supposed to reach some of these? It's not like my hands are that small. I mean, look at this. The thumb cluster in particular is just awkward beyond description. It baffles the mind. I mean, look at this. I can only hit these 3 keys. I can't even hit the spacebar for God's sake. What the fuck is this bullshit? To complicate matters, not all buttons are in this key bowl. A large amount of keys, such as the numpad, navigation keys, F keys, and the other of the two space bars are on this platform, which, because it's so high up, to me at least, looks even less accessible than they would be on a normal keyboard. I mean, surely this has to be less accessible than this. So, what's the point? By the all-consuming anus of assholia, what pickled dog turd came up with this? The layout clearly doesn't help either. It's not a standard QWERTY one, but instead XUGMPB, which doesn't look like any of the standard alternative layouts like Dvorak or Colmac or whatever. This appears to be their own idea. It's also got 4 and a bit rows of letter keys rather than the more familiar 3, never mind the fact that some keys, like the U and I, are for some reason scattered away to the thumb area here. Imagine typing U or I with your thumb, fucking Jesus bread and fish multiplying Christ on a water biscuit. It's capable of other layouts too, which you can switch to with this bank of dip switches at the back, but I left it as is to get a feel for the way it was meant to be, you know, get the full shock and awe, that sort of thing, fully immerse myself in the consternation of using a Maltron keyboard. This does mean that I had to keep my hand away all the time so that I could see where all the keys were though, which I guess completely defeats the purpose. But then again, I don't think any layout would have made this keyboard an enjoyable, or even an endurable, experience. Presumably to facilitate changing of the layout using the same keycaps, they made them DSA profile, which is the same across all rows, making them freely interchangeable. They also have spherical key tops, so they're a bit like low uniprofile SA. Never been a fan of DSA myself. I think they look like arse, although I know some people like them a lot. These ones are lasered though, so they're not even high quality. They look pretty shit actually. So this default layout makes absolutely no sense to me whatever, but I'll try and walk you through some of it. The numbers are in 2 rows at the top, and then come the letters with some symbol keys thrown in at seemingly random places. Now, why the flaming spaghetti fuck they put these random shits in here and then exiled U and I to the thumb cluster is absolutely beyond me. What in the name of Jesus Christ stapled arse were they thinking? Other things in the thumb cluster include the arrow keys, bafflingly enough. And there's also Enter, Caps Lock, Shift and Control. I mean, what the fuck? Pressing any of these keys with your thumb is about as weird as it sounds, by the way. But hey, I'm glad I switched to using my thumb for the spacebar years ago at least. This tiny little 2-unit fucker is all you get on quite a few of these ergonomic keyboards actually. And then there's this sad little Windows key over here. I mean, what is this? What's the point? The other Windows key isn't even that far away. What do they feel the addition of this exile here brought to the table? By the way, you might have been wondering why there's these little LEDs all over the place. They're to indicate that the modifier next to them has been pressed. See, if you want to do Control V, for example, you don't just hold down Control and press V because they knew this keyboard was way too terrible to be able to execute such a complicated procedure on. Instead, they pre-compensated for the impossibility of using it, so you just press Control once and it holds it while you're looking for the V key. Ah, there it is. And then it outputs Control plus V. It's the same for Shift and Alt as well. The left-hand top side houses another Windows space and enter key. In this one, the space bar is even smaller, just 1 unit. I'm really not sure why you'd ever want to press these keys, because then you'd have to reach over and they put the keys at a really awkward angle. I mean, even I can see that this is not a natural posture for your wrists. It also includes the Nav keys, another backspace, Control, Alt and Shift, and the back accent key for some reason. Yeah, this thing genuinely baffles me, honestly. Anyway, at the top are the F keys, marked in yellow. You know what, I just noticed it's not even aligned properly. Look at this, it's kind of slanted to the right slightly. And that's apart from the switches, which aren't aligned either. See, the keycaps don't really turn around, so that's not what's causing it, it's just misaligned. But that's going to keep some people awake at night. The keyboard itself is actually extremely terribly built. It weighs only 735 grams, which is virtually nothing. There isn't a mounting plate either. The switches just directly clip into the housing, which is hair-thin plastic, by the way, just a single millimeter thick. Let me show you an indication of what I mean by pressing on this part of the keyboard here. I mean, see, see how much it gives in? It's just ridiculous. And remember, this is a very small footprint. If it were full size, it'd give in way more than this. In fact, it's handmade and it looks the part as well. It's also hand-wired, as you can see from the insides. The keyboard doesn't use a PCB type matrix or even a membrane one. It's all connected with these wires, which makes it look very organic, much like looking inside the belly of the beast. I'm pretty sure all these wires have an isolating coating on them, or it'd short like crazy. Now, I get it, it's handmade, so maybe £300 isn't all that uncalled for, but honestly, I don't see how I could justify any keyboard with this kind of build quality, let alone for £300. And yeah, ergo stuff is generally expensive, and the crazier it gets, the more crazy expensive the price tag becomes, by which logic this should theoretically cost $100 billion. But still, being practically made out of cardboard, it just feels like it's too much, you know? If you get an expensive specialist keyboard, you'd hope it'd at least be able to take a few knocks. And finally, the switches, which are some of my least favorite in the MX range, Cherry MX Black, truly the cherry on top of the shit cake. I hate these because I think they're too stiff for linear switches, and they're scratchy too, besides being boring, so there's basically nothing I like about this switch. Not that you really notice it all that much when you're typing at 2 words per minute though. Possibly the only advantage to using something this insufferable. The crappy switches don't stand out so much. Jesus, splooge gargling Christ making tortellinis. I fucking hate this thing. It's probably no surprise, but the keyboard doesn't have any feet, and frankly I'm not sure I'd want to tilt this thing anyway, and it comes with a PS2 connector on a translucent cable, which is really unfortunate because that means I actually had to use it. If it had had some kind of fucked up terminal jack, I could have just admired it from a distance, but no, I had to physically touch this blasted abomination. Now, overall, I don't know what inane poodle fucker signed off on this, but I know they need to have their brains examined. If they're not already the consistency of runny eggs, then I don't know what could have caused anyone to come up with anything like this catastrophic cunt plunger. If this keyboard was alive, I bet it would go, "Kill me." Fuck this shit, and I'm gonna have to type on it as well. Why did I even get this thing? I could have just not bought it and kept my money, and then I wouldn't have had to do all this horrible typing on it. I could have been fine and happy and not learned about the horrors of... Where's the apostrophe key? I don't think it's there.